In today's coaster review, I'm talking about the one, the only top thrill dragster at Cedar Point, one of the tallest and fastest roller coasters in the world. I'm going to be giving all of my thoughts and opinions on it. I got to experience the coaster for the first time last August, so let's get to it. This is an Intamin Strata coaster. Cedar Point is located in Sandusky, Ohio. Its maximum height is 420 feet. That is that top hat element. And the coaster launches you at 120 miles per hour in 4.5 seconds. You go over the crest, drop 400 feet down a 90-degree spiral, and the ride is over in 30 seconds. Very simple, very short ride, but very effective. There's a reason this is one of the most thrilling roller coasters in the world. It delivers a lot in a short amount of time. Now, what Cedar Point has done is that they have themed it to essentially drag racing. There's a race car when you exit the line, and of course when you're in the vehicle about to launch, they have the stoplight countdown. And then you cross the finish line when the ride is over. And to go along with the theme, if you're not interested in riding the coaster, the ride is still out in the open, and they have actually set up bleachers so that people can watch the ride, which I think is brilliant. And I think it's a very suitable theme for this coaster. When you're racing, you think of speed, and Top Thrill Dragster launches you at 120 miles per hour. That's nuts. Now, if you're riding this coaster for the first time, the part of the ride that you probably would be nervous about is that launch, just because you're accelerating so fast in such a short amount of time. But once you're actually at the top, if you're scared of heights, Top Thrill Dragster actually isn't that bad, and here's why. You are up there for such a short amount of time, you don't know what hit you. You are still processing that launch, that by the time you get to the top, you don't have time to think, and then boom, you're already back down at the bottom. I think for people scared of heights, Millennium Force or Magnum XL 200 is going to be a lot more intimidating because you have that lift hill going up. Now, one thing I love about Top Thrill Dragster is it is intense, and you would expect it to be with a launch that fast, and when you're going up so high, this is an intense ride. Now, what's cool about it is that when you get up to the top, you start to slow down because you've used up all of your energy. And so you get up to the top and you're only going about 5 or 6 miles per hour. And then you just crest over the top and then you build up all of that speed again. Now, of course, most people know every once in a while on a windy day or maybe when it's a bit rainy, the speed will get thrown off a bit and Top Thrill Dragster will launch, get up to the top, and it can't quite make it over and it'll actually roll back. I've never actually seen Top Thrill Dragster roll back in person, but from what I've heard, that actually happens quite a bit. And this ride uses so much technology, it's pretty common for one of the sensors to trip, and so this ride does suffer a lot of downtime. Also because Lake Erie has lots of winds, and because this ride is so tall, they can't operate it in high winds. So when you get to Cedar Point, this is definitely one of those rides that you want to ride early, because this thing can get a long line, and then you could be halfway through waiting in line for it, and it'll break down and be down for a long period of time. This is what happened to me. I waited in line for this coaster for probably an hour, and it was down for a while, and so we left the line. And what was funny was we actually asked the ride-op how often it happens. He said, not very often, probably 4 or 5 times a day. True story, but yeah, this thing does break down a lot. So that's the downside. But if you're at Cedar Point, you absolutely have to experience this thing. In my opinion, it's not the best ride at Cedar Point, but it is probably one of the most exhilarating, if not the most exhilarating. Now, one of the inevitable comparisons people make to Top Thrill Dragster is comparing it to King Dakar. I've actually done a coaster fight that you can view on this channel where I compare the two, but one of the arguments people make is that Top Thrill Dragster is smoother, and this is true. Now, when you are going through that launch, even on Top Thrill Dragster, it can be a little shaky. It's not going to be as smooth as some of these other launches that aren't going as fast, but it's by no means rough. And the other great thing about Top Thrill Dragster is, of course, that it has lap bars, so you feel very exposed. So you crest over that 420-foot tall top hat, and you're looking straight down the bottom, and you don't have an over-the-shoulder restraint or anything, so you feel very open and exposed. It's crazy. Now, here's my thing with the drop. The drop on Top Thrill Dragster probably isn't even in my top 10 for best drops on roller coasters. And I think the reason for that is that because when the drop goes straight down and doesn't spiral, you float up out of your seat more, and the general public are going to find it a lot more intimidating. Top Thrill Dragster's drop feels more like an inline twist turned vertical. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just I'd probably prefer the normal straight drop, but I guess that's why they have Valraven. But you don't ride Top Thrill Dragster for the drop. You ride it because of that launch, how high you go, and just for the overall experience. I mean, you're talking about the second tallest roller coaster in the world. It makes sense that this thing gets a huge line. So those are my overall thoughts on Top Thrill Dragster. For a final score, I am giving the coaster a 9 out of 10. I think it is super exhilarating, great ride, but I will say it does very much feel like a one-trick pony. But no roller coaster is perfect, so it's really not a big deal. But I think this ride proves that you can have the stats on your side, and yet there can be other roller coasters out there that are better. I would definitely prefer Millennium Force, even though it's not as tall or fast. So I want to know from you, what are your thoughts on Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point? Make sure to post all of your comments below. If you're new to Coaster Studios, you can check out other coaster reviews I have done on my channel. They're all available in a playlist in alphabetical order. And of course, stay tuned for more.